Hello, I'm Dane. Happy weekdays, and welcome to another episode of Dax Jutsu. In tonight's episode, we'll be discussing how to dynamically age assets in Power BI. So I do have a sample dataset with me, care of ChatGPT, my friend. I have a column for a PO number, anything that will uniquely identify your asset, the asset name, the asset type, the PO date, or whenever the asset was capitalized, and the disposal date. And I do have another table, which is a calculated one using calendar, and our start date is the minimum PO date, and the end date is today. And these two are related on date in the calendar and PO date in the PO table. Oops. Mm, Let me delete all those non-existing. That's very weird. Anyway, so let's start putting our data in a visual first. So we have a PO number, PO date, and it should be a table. So PO number, PO date, disposal date, asset name, asset type. And then let's add our date to the slicer. And let's make sure that we are selecting before. Before. Let's minimize that a bit and let's check if our relationships work. Okay, it works. So we are going to be creating a measure called PO age, and PO age is simply first we need to get the max date in our calendar. So that would be calculate max as of date, and you want to make sure that the max date is the max date among the visible rows. And then let's have age first, and we use date diff. And date diff simply calculates the difference between two dates. So that's date one minus, or date two minus date one. And if we have the same dates, then you will get zero. So let's say our date one is PO date, and our date two is max date, and the interval is day. So if I return this, let's see what we'll get. And I'll move it to, okay, this is what I was talking about earlier. So if we are comparing the same date, then we're going to get zero. So if I move this to January 2, 1999, then we'll get one. Okay, so let's let's make it like now. What we want to do next is to make sure that first I'll remove this filter and I'm going to check on my max date 9510 because I might be using that later. And I'll go back to just those few rows. Okay. So what you wanna do next is you wanna make sure that once an asset has been disposed, it shouldn't be visible anymore. So for example, if I select January, let's say December 31, 2010, we want to make sure that A001 is no longer visible because it's been disposed as of 12/31/2010. So I'll add another variable here and I'll name this disposal date, which is selected value disposal date. So if our disposal date is greater than or equal to max date, then max date, then return age. So, so right now we have 12/31/2010. So A001 is no longer visible. Now, the next thing we want to do is to be able to filter according to age. So if I add a slicer here and put age in the field well or field tile, the slicer is not going to accept it because PO age is a measure, it's not dimension. So we need to kind of materialize PO age using a different table. So I'm going to create a calculated table and I'll call that ages. And I will generate a series of numbers starting from, let's say, 0. And as far as I can remember, our max date earlier was 951, or max age was 9510. And our interval is 1. So we have 0 until 9510. But just in case we want the max age to be dynamic, we can just calculate that. So, see. So we get the day minus min of PO date. And let's return if I'll just add, I'll just put this to our end date. That's it. Okay, we have 9510. And the next thing I want to do is to change the name of this value column to age. And I'll do that by using select columns and I'll select just a value column. So we now have age instead of value. And we need to materialize this measure. So what we're going to do is, of course, create another measure that is referencing this PO age measure and our ages table. Okay, so new measure. Let's say PO age materialize equals. So we will count the number of rows PO has because one row or one record in PO table is equivalent to one asset. Calculate. And we want to filter it by PO date. So you might be wondering why I am filtering values, or why I am filtering on PO date instead of filtering the whole table. Because we want to filter the column that is relevant to our calculation. And PO date is relevant to our calculation because that's the column we use in PO age measure. So PO age in values, ages, age. So I'll copy this and I will add PO. I will add this. I will add the age to this. We still can't filter it yet because we haven't added the PO age materialized measure yet here. So this tells us that we have 25 assets that are still active as of 12/31/2010, and these are their ages. So with this, I can filter. Huh? Why can't I filter this? Oh, so I need to remove this POH first, and then I need to add that age. Yes, and summarize. Here we go. Now we get to filter our age. And then if I remove age, we should still get the same result. Okay. So we do have the same result as the second table. The next thing we want to do is modify this calculated table and add age in year. So age in years. And we do that by dividing value over 365. And we want to get just the integer of that. So our year 0 should be until days age 364 only. And age 1 starts at 365. I'll copy this and replace age with age in years. And I'll filter that. I want to make sure I want to filter this filter. So you want to get just age in years and summarize age in years. So we have just ages 0 to 5, or in this case, just ages 0 or 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. Okay. So you might be wondering now, we've got a problem. Because depending on whether there's a leap year in between, a year can have 365 or 366 days. So this calculation of age does not take into consideration a leap year. So we need to create another measure for that. And then that's what we will use to materialize our ages. So I'll create a new measure and I'll call it PO age and leap years. Okay. Mm, And we don't need age variable anymore because we will be calculating this differently. Instead, we will create another variable, which is what we'll call min date, which is simply selected value PO date. And then another table called filtered dates. So what this filtered date do is we will filter our as of date table based on these variables. And we will exclude Feb 29. So the max days a year can have is only 365, not 366. So I'm going to filter a date column of this dates table. And I want to make sure that as of date, the format that to MMDD is not equal to 0229. Oh, 022, correct? 29, which is Feb 29. So this will exclude Feb 29 from this filter values from this virtual table. And want to make sure that as of as of let me just copy this. And I'll move that to another row. Want to make sure that as of date, mm, okay, as of date is greater than our min date. Why greater than? Because remember, our calculations is supposed to start on the day after, not on the same day as the disposal date. I mean, the calculation of our age. So min date, its date is greater than min date, and as of date is less than or equal to our max date. And of course, we want to make sure that disposal date is always greater than or equal to our max date. And this will create a virtual table of date, including and excluding the values or the dates according to our filter. And we will just return the rows that virtual table has. So if I add that to this UH leap year, um, the numbers will be about the same, except that if there is a leap year in between PO date and our as of date, and POH and leap years will be lower, of course. And to check, let's go to what 2001. You can see now that there is leap year between January 20 January 2000 is a leap year, and so there is Feb 29 in between January 29 2000 and January 2 2001, which makes POH in leap year slower than a POH. So let's modify now our POH materialize to use POH leap years. You may have noticed that the numbers here have changed. These used to be the numbers 732, but now it's 731, 339, 338. And POH materialized, that will be the count of assets that are active as of this date. Well, that's it from me. I hope you've learned something. Thank you for staying with me and have a good one. Bye bye.